Let's get you on the record here when it comes to Destyn Hill. Meet the Nole percentage that Destyn Hill contributes this year.
My percentage before he got here was probably 25%. Okay. When he got here and the stuff I've heard from the workouts, my percentage goes up to 60. Where I think he's actually going to flash, do some things, kind of a Portier type, Portier, however you say his last name. I want to make sure I get it right. Tron, I'm sorry if I said your name wrong, but I think it's going to be flashing kind of like what he did last year, where we saw kind of the emergence of Tron, and then the spring Tron was phenomenal. I think Justin's going to have that type of year because he looks phenomenal. I'm hearing a lot of great things about what the workouts are like and how things are going, but you still want to see it on the field, what happens when he gets hit and all that stuff, and the physicality. And so that's kind of what I want to see. But I think he is. I've heard a lot. I mean, a lot of positive buzz about him in practice at these workouts for FSU, and there's a lot of excitement about him that doesn't usually hear that from a first year guy. Obviously, I clearly hear tons of stuff about Keon, but I personally think Keon's going to be their best playmaker this year. I mean, that's how high the praise I'm getting, and that's no slight to Johnny or Trey or any of those guys, but that's kind of what I hear. But with Destyn, I think it has gone up about just how high of a chance I think you're going to see him make an impact on this team. But that's what I kind of think the Tron kind of impact that he had.
Hector Cartagena. How do you think Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell sell recruits, mostly offensive line recruits, I would think, on coming here with the assumption that Alex Atkins most certainly at some point is going to leave here in the coming years?
Well, I think that's a little easier compared to the Odell situation because you're talking about retirement compared to somebody leaving for another school for a job. Yeah, I think it's inevitable that we will see Alex get a head coaching job, but at the same time, I think it's going to have to be somebody it's a really good fit. It's a really big place for him to leave FSU. I think he's very happy there, and I think he gives off the vibe of how happy he is at FSU because he's getting valuable. He's getting valuable just reps to a point of working with a guy like Mike Norvell and seeing this offense evolve. We've seen this offense. Nothing against Kenny Dillingham, but this offense looked much cleaner in everything this past year. What they were doing and running, and I think kids see that. But I just think you sell them on what he is and what the offense is going to be and what the program is going to be. You can't start focusing on what somebody could do as far as leaving. You let them know how happy you are because they can't really answer that question. What are they going to say? I could have a job somewhere. It's like you can't really tell people or guess about what somebody is. I think you show them what the program is, how you feel about the program, what you believe in, how you believe in it, and just where it's going. So I think for me, it's just it's continuing to evolve as a staff to where this program's going. And I think Alex does one of the best jobs with that is the way he resonates with guys. And I think it's just business as usual. You stay on point, Hector, and you go from there. But I don't think he really has to sell much because you basically pitch your development, what the program's doing, where you're going, and after that, it's kind of kids kind of know. It's why Alex has done so darn well recruiting everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's an offensive lineman or somebody else. It's why they've kicked butt so much in recruiting in this cycle.
Man, poor Hector catching a lot of strays in the chat.
Okay.
Fair question. I get you, Hector. And I
That's a good question. I don't have a problem with the question. I mean, it's just I think a lot of people play what ifs as far as thinking down the line with scenarios, and I don't think recruits think that way. I don't think recruits look at the recruiting like, "Hey, is this coach gonna? Is this
Deion
coach gonna?"
Sanders, everybody, right?
Yeah.
Like, look at Deion. No one was like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Is he going to be here? Like, I don't know what he's going to do. Like, man, you just
Yeah.
you jump and you go. And then you got the portal. You've got the get out of jail card. I mean, you got free movement. You got free agency practically. So that's probably the real big deal.
Which happens first? Miami is back or FSU gets out of the ACC?
Ooh, I'm going to say FSU gets out of the ACC first.
But Miami's never going to be back, apparently. I thought there was a chance once the NIL came into play and they had a billionaire benefactor that was giving them all the money, but turns out that was a house of cards, and he's another Nevin Shapiro. So who knows, man? Who knows?
And look, I mean, there's nobody you talk to in this industry that is hearing good things about what's happening at Miami. Like when you look at the coaching turnover, the coaches who have left that staff, I mean, there's no good conversation. Even when things weren't going great there, you would hear positive things from different corners about what was happening there. Maybe Mark Richt's going to be the difference there or whatever. Like people I talk to in the business, man, there's nobody that talks well of what's going on at Miami right now.
It's been 20 years, guys. Well, it's been 20 years since that game in Tally in the rain with Rick's throwing to Sean Taylor.
Yeah.
That was like the last great day of the Miami dynasty was 20 years ago. And I will say there is a chance, right, with NIL, because if NIL didn't exist and it was just the same game it was in 2015 and 14, I would say no chance because their facilities are so bad. And the stadium's 45 minutes from campus and the fan base sucks. But with NIL, you could theoretically pay for a great roster that gets to live in Miami. So there is that element to it. Maybe there's a sliver of a chance that they find somebody that can bankroll a very good football team, but it's a sliver.
I don't think that works. I don't think billionaires are going to just pour money.
Agreed.
It's not going to work that way, I don't believe. But look, to your point about facilities, guys, think about this, the state of Florida. And this is a better conversation about what's going to happen in the state of Florida moving forward. USF just approved funding for an on-campus football stadium today. They just approved it today. Miami still does not have that and has not had that and won't have it anytime soon. Think about that. USF. And I've said for a while, and I really believe this, Deion Sanders is a fool. He should have taken the USF job. You look at the talent-rich area you're in. If you can get an on-campus facility and you can get people to stay on campus in Tampa, I mean, dude, they could be a monster. They could be Levitt knew that. Levitt got them up as high as ranked number 2 in the country. There was momentum there. It all fell off when he decided to strangle a kid in the locker room. But they had real momentum at one time. I've always felt like USF and or UCF would be a giant in the sport at some point, but they needed to obviously to build a tradition, and it starts with having an on-campus facility, I think.
So they'll take Miami's spot.
They just approved it, and Miami still doesn't have it. It's crazy to think about that.
Jordan Harris with the adorable baby avatar wearing the shades. Nice. How often will we see 2 tight ends this year, do you think? 2 tight end set, that is. Play calling possibilities are limitless with these playmakers.
I think a whole lot. I mean, I think you're probably going to see a whole lot, 2 tight ends and 1 running back. I think you might see 3 tight ends. I mean, Chris Thompson, I keep going back to that interview. Remember him in the spring when he was talking about the different options of what it does when you've got tight ends that are athletic and you've got multiple of them, where now when the defense can't line up, and just say, okay, that tight end's in, so it's a running play, and that tight end is in, it's a pass play. It's a big deal, man. It just takes away so many of the defense's advantages, and the fact that we've seen Marquiston can run for his size. And Jaheim Bell impressed me with his blocking. I did not expect him to be a guy that would be a willing blocker, but there were some moments in the spring, especially when he went up against Verse, where I was like, okay, I think he knows he knows he has to prove that to be an NFL top, highly sought after top draft pick. And I think he's committed to doing it.
Yeah. My favorite part of that with talking to Thompson was just like, he's like, yeah, man, we are really hard to defend. He's like, Oklahoma decided, they were not going to let us, run the ball on them. Cause remember, like Trey was, destined to run for 1,000 yards last year. And he absolutely was kind of hemmed up against Oklahoma. He's like, that's why we end up throwing for 400 yards against Oklahoma. So it's like, all right, yeah, man, like decide how you want to lose the football game. And then Florida State will pick that as their method to win. So, but yeah, man, as intriguing as Kyle Morlock is, man, Marquiston's done it, man. Marquiston just has that I don't want to call him Nikola Jokic because like Nikola Jokic is the best basketball player in the world right now. But like you look at Nikola Jokic run up the floor and you're like, this guy is supposed to be like this all-world, basketball player, and he is. Like, yeah, Markieson isn't built like Vernon Davis or enter Gronk, all these kind of guys, man. But he figures out a way to work the leverage and the angles, and he gets open, and he's got pretty reliable hands. And then obviously Jaheim is all that stuff you want. So
I heard your boy Russillo talking about Jokic the other day on a podcast. He said that when he was looking at him, when he's looking at some of the international players that year for the draft, he said the only thing he remembers thinking is, man, the fat kid can pass. But he was like, there was no comparisons to even like what that could be. And that's to your point. Like, there's just not a lot of dudes built like Markieson Douglas. And I think the FSU staff thinks Markieson, there was a point in time a couple of years ago where they were talking about moving him to tackle, and he didn't want to do it. But there's a belief that he's going to be a big time NFL, not big time, but he'll be a really legitimate NFL player for the tight end. So yeah, man, he's a weapon.
It's the whole reason he's called Biscuit, right? I've always thought it was because he's like a biscuit away from being an offensive lineman. So shout out to Biscuit, though. Making plays. Ask Oklahoma. They know who Biscuit is.